Hello, everyone. You're listening to Game Rivals, a podcast where a Nintendo fan and a PlayStation fan talk about the latest games and happenings in the gaming community and industry. I'm one of your hosts, Maximilian X, and together with SeanTemplar, we bring you this bi weekly podcast about video games.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome to this special next generation console edition episode of Game Rivals. How are you doing, my friend Maximilian?
I'm good, SeanTemplar. It's it's been a week of surprises.
It's a strange week.
It is a strange, like in general, it's a strange week. Everybody knows why it's a strange week. I don't want to dive into that because we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so kicking it off, that Microsoft out of the blue did some kind of event at their headquarters for the Xbox Series X, in which
Hmm.
they unveiled the specifications, the box in depth, so like what's in it, the controller, and two key features. Um, it's pretty surprising because nobody saw it coming, I think, and it also seized the narrative because until that event, everybody was talking about Sony and like, oh, when they are gonna announce something, or hey, it's so silent. There's an event upcoming, but we don't know when, and blah blah blah. And then this kind
Rumors
of hit,
abound at the very least.
yeah, and this kind of hit like a bombshell, and now everybody's talking about Microsoft.
Hmm. And well, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna be completely honest. I was flabbergasted, mostly because it came out of nowhere. And on the same day, they also released a new blog post, um, detailing like the specs, like the most important specs that you want to know about the next generation systems. Things that have been rumored for such a long freaking time are finally laid to rest for the most part. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised with at least the technical demos that they showed. They showed off a couple of things, but let's just take it one step at a time. What do you want to start with, Sean Templar?
I think it's best to just walk through the information we got. So like
Yeah,
is gonna have well, let's get the numbers out of the way. So it's gonna have
yeah.
16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, which is shared. So games will be able to use 13.5 gigabytes of that memory. Um, then it has a 8-core Zen 2 architecture, meaning that 7 cores are for games, one is for operating system and stuff like that. They will be running at 3.8 gigahertz or 3.6 if they use multi-threading. The GPU is built off of a custom AMD Radeon Navi GPU. It's based on the RDNA 2.0 architecture, which is actually coming out this year, so it's not even come out yet. Um, GPU has 52 compute units running at 1.825 gigahertz. I have no idea what that all means. And it supports ray tracing. As for resolution, we kind of knew it will support native 4K up to 120 hertz. 8K also, I honestly have my doubts about that.
We'll come back to you guys on the native 4K when we do the comparisons, but suffice to say, the fact that that with Xbox Series X it specifically says native 4K is interesting.
Yeah, but like I cannot imagine that the new PlayStation will not have native 4K.
I don't know,
No,
but
no, no,
let's
no, no, no.
continue.
Let's get this out of
No,
the world.
okay, fine.
There is no way
Hmm.
that they will release a console that doesn't do native 4K. Because if Sony does it, they might as well quit the console business. I mean, they will be at every moment somebody gets to bash him about it, someone will bash him about it. So let's get it out of the way. The PlayStation 5 is going to support native 4K. Just because some stupid ass spec sheet doesn't say native 4K doesn't mean it's not going to do native 4K.
Okay, so remember how this generation started?
Yes.
Remember how the previous generation was the HD generation, even though most games only ran up to 720p.
Yes.
Yeah, and how this generation still couldn't get to 1080p until they did the mid-gen refresh, and even then it's variable.
No, that's not true because I remember that a lot of Xbox One games ran at 900p, but a lot of PlayStation games ran at 1080p, such as Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which was a launch title.
Did they though?
And
I
they
mean,
did.
maybe they did, but I'm pretty sure that they used dynamic resolution with that though.
No. But anyways, like an Xbox One X that is sold right now does
Yeah,
native 4K. So like you cannot tell me that Sony has been investing money into a hardware in a console for 5 years that doesn't do native 4K.
I'm just saying, man. It's not like it hasn't happened before.
No man, no. If what you're saying is like is not possible. It's like saying that Microsoft's going to make a shoe. It's like a business they will never get into. Or they're like,
Well,
oh, we're gonna make a shoe, but it's not gonna have laces.
nobody expected them to get into the gaming business as in console makers to begin with.
No,
So
but that's different. It's media
yeah,
related.
yeah.
Anyways, um, it's gonna have a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. Is gonna allow, as what we discussed earlier, some expansion capabilities through an external slot.
Yeah, it
But
looks
it's
really nice too.
proprietary, so it might cost like a lot of monies.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially considering that they specifically say that the expansion card is 1 terabyte. There's no way that is not at least 2 or 300 bucks.
Oh, I think it's even more than that. Uh, the control that's a cool thing. The controller is going to use USB-C. Is going to have a
Hmm.
dedicated share button. The controller has been redesigned, so like the upper side of the controller is more curved, so it sits better in your hands,
And
and
textured.
textured. And you can use your Xbox One controller on the Xbox Series X and vice versa. So it's backwards compatible and it's also forwards compatible, to put it that way.
Hmm.
So you can just, if you like want to play multiplayer, you can just use a One S controller or a One X controller, um, and basically you do that. And then they also focused a lot around like two in really important features, which is one is the suspend feature, so you can suspend a couple of games, and even though if you turn the console off, it will keep it in the memory, so you can instantly switch to those games. Um, if you're playing, so for example, in the demo they showed State of Decay, and then suddenly they switched to Forza, and then they switched to Ori, and then they switched back to State of Decay, and it was all pretty instant. And they could just continue where they left off. No loading screen, no booting up, no save, whatever. It was just like
Yeah,
few
man.
seconds of loading the game because it needs to take it out of the memory, and then bam, you can just go where you left off.
Yeah, each switch took like a few seconds to switch to the game, and
Yeah,
you're like, bam,
yeah.
you're continuing right where you left off. And the way that they explained it, at least the way that Digital Foundry explained how it works, is that they have a certain allotment of RAM to put games in, and depending on the game, from what generation it is, you can theoretically have more games in suspension, like for example, if you have an Xbox original game in suspension, and you have an Xbox 360 game in suspension, and maybe a Xbox Live Arcade game in suspension, and then like maybe two um, uh, Series X games, you could technically do that because they take up less RAM space. So you could technically have more, but maximum, I think they said, if you're doing Xbox One and Series X, you could slot up to a maximum of 4 games in suspension. So that already is like really cool.
Oh, definitely. I don't know why you would want more because, like, when I play right now, I generally tend to play one game at a time, maybe two, because like one single player game and one multiplayer game. So I would have like kind of a, I don't know, I would go nuts if I can spend up to 4 games because I never play 4 games at a time. Uh,
I mean, it's the nice thing. It's there. It's there.
yeah. Another thing they showed was the loading times on State of Decay as an example. Um, I it felt like a really extreme example because they showed a State of Decay running off a hard drive on an Xbox One and on the Series X, and it was a huge difference, but it felt a
Yeah,
little bit exaggerated.
yeah,
'Cause it
but
almost felt like, for comparison, it felt like that the Xbox One version had a load time of 5 minutes, and that the Series X version had a load time of 30 seconds. Kinda felt like that. I'm like, "Whoa, okay."
yeah. Well, the Xbox Series X had, I think, a load time. What was it? 8 seconds,
Something like that.
and the load time for the Xbox One X was, I think, 30 seconds.
Oh, it felt longer than that, man. It felt
Yeah,
really
I
long.
if you're looking at it like that with a timer, then yeah, it feels longer. But yeah, it was thirty
Oh
seconds.
my
But
god.
even then, it's like
It really felt
that's
like a
actually
couple of
pretty
minutes,
impressive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, let's see. They showed Gears of War 5 running on Xbox Series X. It
Mm,
was, to be honest, I didn't see like a lot of improvement. They said it's running on the ultra settings of the PC, plus
mhm.
a few extra features that are not available on the PC build. But you could see a difference, but it wasn't like that I thought like, "Whoa, okay, wow, I really need to head out and buy an Xbox One right now or a Series X right now." It's like subtle difference.
Well, the difference was because it's. I mean, it's the difference is that it was a ray tracing demo,
Mhm.
so it's not like they changed anything in the geometry. All they did was add ray tracing lighting.
Yeah, but they said they added a few extra thingies, but like, for
Yeah,
example, with
but
Minecraft, they only added ray tracing, which was like a
yeah.
huge difference.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That looked
But
really
the
nice.
but from what I um was it, I think it was also Digital Foundry, because they like, if you want like an really comprehensive conversation that goes in deeper than we ever could, um check out the Digital Foundry video, because they go like really into that if you're into that kind of stuff. If you're not into that kind of stuff, don't, because you might get really bored.
Yeah.
um because it's a lot of dry talk. They do show examples and stuff like that, but basically, at least with how it worked with the Minecraft demo, is that you have the Bedrock version that's currently out, with like the regular textures, but for the ray tracing, they had to change the textures into ones that have bump mapping and stuff like that, so that it reflects the light realistically. And it is literally night and day difference,
Oh, yeah.
mostly because they also shift from day to night.
Yeah.
But also, you could see the seams, you could see the blocks, you could see the shading off the blocks, which is ridiculous because they're just big pixelated blocks, but you could see all the nice little levels of shades and
You
shadow
could
and
see the
lighting.
fire reflecting off a train track.
It's so amazing. Like, if you have the time, Microsoft posted those the tech demo videos. IGN has them on their site as well. Look it up. They are, especially the Minecraft one is really cool to look at.
Yeah. Um, they specifically mentioned, um, "Hey, we're calling it the new Xbox, but this is the Series X version," or something in that area. So it
Yeah.
almost confirms that this is probably the Pro version, and I wouldn't be surprised if they announce an Xbox Series S, which will be a cheaper version. I just don't know if they'll do it at launch, or maybe that they'll do it like a year after, because I can imagine it causing some confusion around consumers if they have two boxes to choose from. Um, and yeah, of course, the price difference will help, but um, you know, gamers generally do want like value for their money, so that they do want a true bang for the buck as well as real power. And
Mm.
we've been waiting for this for a couple of years, so I can't imagine people not buying the X version instead of the S version.
Again, considering that those are technically all still rumors, but the way they've been doling out information on the Series X, makes that way more likely, especially with all the information that we just got this week.
Yeah,
Um, when and if they're going to it's not an if,
I
it's
think
not an
at
if, it's a
E3
when.
there, yeah, at E3 we get probably get pricing and a release date.
You mean around the time of E3?
Yeah, so around the E3 they're gonna do like a digital event again.
Yeah.
So then we'll
Well,
probably get
this will be the
pricing
first
and
time they do a digital event, though.
they have to because E3 got canceled.
Yeah, everybody has to.
Yeah, it's good that Sony is not participating. It's easy for them. But I think that
Yeah.
at E3 we'll get a release date and pricing, and because I think because the specs are out of the way, it will be games, 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 and even more games.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, specs is not something that you throw around during that time, especially not during a that one is specifically aimed at consumers, whereas uh what is it called again? Um,
I have no.
I forgot.
Okay.
Uh, yeah. I mean, compared to what we had this week, let's not forget that this week technically was supposed to be GDC.
Yes.
So basically, because they're also doing right now the Microsoft Game Stack thing. It's like very this is literally like the workshop. I'm used to like seeing this stuff as like the workshops that you went to at GDC back in the day when I used to go to GDC, and it's all just like really dry stuff, really specific towards talking to developers. Um, and yeah, I mean, they did this also so that people like hardcore fans can get excited because, you know, Karen is not going to be watching or looking out for this kind of information. You know, like regular Joe Schmo is not going to be looking out for this stuff. They're waiting for the announcements that come around E3 time because that is specifically generated towards fans. So I hope if they do plan on, I don't think that. Here's the thing: if their original plan for Microsoft was to release two consoles this year, it's not going to happen.
No.
It's not, especially considering the current state of the world. It's not going to happen. I think they're going to focus on the Series X, and depending on how things look in early 2021, we might see the Series S get launched there. Announced. It might get announced this year, and they might say, "Well, seeing as you know, we
I don't
can't
know if
take a
they
lot of
do
stuff.
this
They
year.
might do that."
If they
I
announce
think.
it
I
this
think.
year, then people will wait because everything is also coming to Xbox One. So people will say, "Oh, you know what? I might sit out and wait and don't buy an X and buy an S." So they'll lose sales on it.
I don't think that matters.
I think that it does because what's the incentive to upgrade to a new console besides being an early adopter?
Yeah, for those that want to be an early adopter. I mean, if they're going for a Series S, if the Series S is supposed to be something more affordable, therefore technically weaker, um, end quote. Yeah, because they can't see that I'm doing the quote signs. You can. Um, podcast. um, but if they choose, I mean, if they choose to do that, it doesn't matter because Microsoft have already said that they're not gonna put out exclusives for the first year. So whether they sell a lot doesn't matter because the other thing that they're also focusing on is xCloud. I think that they're going to start as long as development on xCloud is not being delayed as well. They're gonna really push xCloud really hard so that that also launches around the same time the Series X does, so that if people want a cheaper solution to playing high fidelity games but not buying a Series X, that they can go for xCloud, why not?
Yeah.
It's a cheaper proposition and it's something that's easily implemented. I mean, they're doing the test flight on iOS right now in certain regions. So who knows? Who knows what comes out of that? The only thing that's gripping the industry by the gonads is this dang virus thing that's going around. So unless unless that starts to clear up so that people don't have to worry and work can resume as usual, I think that xCloud is on its way to also launch this holiday season.
Yeah, I hope so. Cause you know we're moving into this point that we're moving away from hardware based software or services and more towards like the cloud thingies, and we
Yeah,
need
yeah, a little
proper
bit, a
cloud
little bit.
thingies to kind of like also create competition because Stadia is not what it's supposed to be. Um, xCloud is promising to be like this. It sounds really good. GeForce
Hmm.
Now is good, besides that it doesn't support 4K, but it just came out. So
Hmm.
yeah,
And as long
PlayStation,
as developers don't continue to be jerks and take their games off of it.
yeah. Um, Sony has said multiple times that there are really exciting things around PlayStation Now that are coming. But yeah, we'll probably hear about that later this year. They have dropped the price, so that's already a move. Um,
They're setting up for something. We just don't know what.
Yeah, and that's kind of where you notice the difference between a Microsoft event and a PlayStation event, because that's where we segue into the PlayStation part. Is that basically today, when we're recording this, of course, Mark Cerny had a deep dive into the specs, and it's the funny thing is 2 days ago or 1 day ago, so like yesterday, we saw the Microsoft stuff, and everybody's talking about, okay, where's Sony? Where's Sony? We're not hearing anything about Sony. And then through Twitter, they said, okay, tomorrow we're gonna do a deep dive around the PS5 specs, and it's really a deep dive, as in really technical,
Oh
technical.
yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, they had Mark Cerny up there, man.
yeah,
You know when Mark Cerny is up talking, it's gonna be very tech focused. But he has such a nice and elegant speaking voice that you kind of don't mind.
yeah, he has a good way of explaining it because he like really explained it in a way that everybody can understand.
Like someone made a comment on Twitter that Mark Cerny should be doing the updates for for the virus, which shall not be named. Um, and like it would be nice to have someone in a calm and very warm and friendly manner explaining what's going on
And
and what
hearing how
people
many
need to
people
do.
die and are infected.
Well, not that part, but just to keep safe and wash your hands. Like to me, I'll take it the next step further. Mark Cerny should just record an audiobook
Who knows?
because
Maybe when
that
he's
would
out of the game industry,
because that would be awesome. Like he should do like a reading of like Ready Player One or something. I don't
he could also maybe
know.
do those nature documentaries and narrate those.
That would be good too. Or Sony Japan develops Tokyo Jungle 2 and he does the narration in that.
Hey, that's also an option.
Yeah.
Uh, we're going back to PlayStation.
Yeah.
Sony said that they had already planned this for GDC, but because GDC got canceled, they're doing a live stream. Basically, he just walked everybody through it. Um, and so the PS5 will be based on the same architecture as the Xbox Zen 2. It will also have 8 cores. It will have a
Well,
variable.
based on the same architecture as in it's using Zen 2, but it's still custom made in corporation in partnership with AMD.
Yeah, they both do.
Yeah.
The PlayStation's clock speed will not be locked. It will be variable. So it could
Ooh.
go higher or go lower. It's also from a power efficiency point of view, which is actually pretty nice because he touched upon that the way Sony kind of develops their cooling solution and develops their power solution is they kind of calculate or try to look for the worst possible scenario with the worst possible game that can push the console to its max, and they aim for that, but that's not always the best or the efficient way. And he used God of War as an example. He said, when I play God of War, my PlayStation's fans really rev up, whereas when he plays something a little bit less intense, he doesn't hear his PlayStation. I thought, hey, you're actually right, because my PS4 Pro has gotten to the point that everything with HDR makes that thing make such a loud noise that if I put two wings on it, it'll probably just take off and fly away because it's producing so much sound. It's almost like a jet engine in my living room. Um, so because of the variable speed, the cooling solution and the power solution is also developed for it. So that's hopeful. And they also said that because, and that's kind of where what really stood out to me, that Sony put a lot of custom work into building. So like
Mm.
with Microsoft, yeah, we custom built this and we custom built that. But like Sony, I think Sony really went above and beyond with custom solutions. So for example,
I
around the
think they had to though.
yeah, because for example, they have an SSD. It has a little bit of a strange storage configuration. It has 825 gigabytes of SSD storage, which is a bit
Which is a
strange.
number that makes absolutely no sense
Yeah,
like, considering how storage is built up, it's always times a certain amount.
yeah.
Where does 825 come in?
Yeah, I think it's because he said that they have 12 channels uh, of memory bandwidth, so kind of like 12 blocks of memory.
So it's not times 4, it's times 12.
Yeah, that's why they get like this bizarre speed because that's something they emphasize like a lot. They said that the PS5
Oh,
SSD
yeah.
can transfer up to 5.5 gigabytes a second,
Raw,
and
like
that's
raw.
raw. Yeah, the Xbox can't get near that.
No, the
Um,
Xbox is running it at 2.4 gigs raw and
yeah,
4.8 gigs compressed.
yeah.
And when you do it on PlayStation 5, the compressed speed is 8 to 9 gigs per second. Dude, that's ridiculous.
It's funny that he actually said that because everything is so instant that developers might actually have to slow things down because we're not used to it being so instant that we might get a disconnect because of it. Because if you die or you load or you fast travel, it's in a blink of an eye that you don't even see the fast travel. So it almost looks like you transport it or teleport it, and that they have to figure something out because otherwise people will not understand that it happened. And I'm like, wow, that sounds so bizarre that it's like that. Um, the funny thing
which
is,
is
yeah,
which is kind of funny because it seems like they solved one problem only to technically create a new one in its
yeah,
stead.
yeah. Yeah, it's super strange. So, like they also told like, hey, they built like a custom flash controller. They built a custom audio engine, which we'll get to in a bit.
Oh,
They built
yes, I
like
want to
a
get into that.
they built like a lot of custom stuff for it. A funny thing is on paper not as powerful as the Series X. So with
But
GPU,
certainly also had an explanation for that too.
yeah, yeah. So for example, with GPUs, they always like have this number. It's called teraflops. Is basically the amount of
The
computation.
complete the complete computational power,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that your console is so much better. It's just that it can do more calculations in a way. So the PlayStation is 10.28 teraflops and the Series X is 12 teraflops. But at the same time, because of that variable um, clock speed, the speed on the process of the GPU is faster on the PlayStation than in the Xbox. It's 2.23 gigahertz versus 1.825, even though they have more compute units. Um, Also, ray tracing hardware based, and yeah, 4K, 120 hertz, 8K. I'll believe that. The 8K part, I'm a bit hesitant. I don't actually believe that's going to happen. 4K is more of a realistic thing. um, Another cool thing is they have an NVMe slot that you can use to upgrade the drive. So you can use an M2 SSD to upgrade the internal storage. Sony has said that because the internal SSD is so bizarre fast that you do need an SSD that is as fast as that SSD, otherwise it won't work.
Well,
You
they actually said faster.
Oh, like, I think that like it needs to be at least as fast as the internal SSD, but
Yeah.
PCIe 3 is not as fast enough, and PCIe 4 has just come
It's
out,
new,
is new, and it does offer
and
that
it does
speed.
well, it doesn't offer that speed yet, but they said that around the time that the PlayStation 5 comes out, those commercial versions
Yeah,
should at least hit 5 gigs, if not 7
yeah,
gigs per second. So they said like, don't go buying
yeah,
NVMe's from M3 right now because you're
yeah.
not going to be able to use them.
But the cool thing is they
And
also said that they're going to internally test drives because they're doing that right now. So they'll be
yeah, because
releasing like
currently
a
you have like
list.
Yeah, because apparently the 3M has like a whole bunch of
M2.
different or sorry, M2 has a bunch of NVMe's drives like in different sizes and shapes,
Yeah.
and even stuff with heat sinks and like
Yep.
actual fans. Like, since when do you need a? Wow,
Yeah, but
okay.
it's funny because I have an NVMe SSD in my PC, and
Does it have a heat sink?
no, because the drive itself doesn't have a heatsink, but there's a heatsink on my logic board, so on my motherboard. So when I take off the motherboard connection, I just slot it in, and there's like this thermal pad on it that goes on top of the SSD, and on top of that is like a mini heatsink. But I have
Ah,
seen PCIe 4 NVMe SSDs, and they have like these massive heatsinks on it because it's so fast and it generates so much heat that
yeah,
that it has to. But Sony has said that around the launch they will release a list of supported drives. They have personally tested, which is really
yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Um, you can still use an external hard drive, for example, for your PS4 games, or you
But
can
for
copy. Yeah,
but for PS5, you really need the
yeah,
NVMe.
you can copy those PS4 games to the internal drive if you want. Um, another benefit they touched upon of the SSD, which is one I love, is that patch installs will be gone or will be way shorter because now it's the most horrifying thing that's there.
On PlayStation? Oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it is
horrifying.
so slow that I just want to cry every time I see a patch. The download and an install, because the download is okay, but the install takes so freaking long. It's like when in the past you would always joke about that your PC would get so slow that would you turn it on, you would
Mhm.
go grab coffee, come back, and still have to wait. It's worse than that.
Yeah,
And I have an SSD in my PS4 Pro. I mean, yeah.
yeah.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh my god.
Uh, yeah.
They didn't go into any things like how the console looks or how the controller looks. It was really, really from a technical point of view, how they're gonna do things. The cool part is they also emphasize that they really made this console with input from developers. So they trying to find a balance also between evolutionary features and revolutionary features, and they don't want to go all out and revolutionize everything because they emphasize that the time a developer needs to get familiar and up and running with the new PlayStation will be around or maybe less than a month,
Mhm.
whereas with the PS4 it was 1 to 2 months, for example, and now it's like shorter than a month. So basically, everybody's going to port over their PS4 games. We're going to get a lot of remakes and remasters, kind of like we're having right now, and original IPs are going to die, and we'll all be playing upscaled and upres versions of PS4 games in the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Yay!
I mean, it sounds cool and interesting, and it's got me a bit more excited. Like the news in general from both Microsoft and Sony, both have gotten me more excited about next generation in general.
Hmm.
Specifically, stuff that they're doing. Again, the thing that really caught my eye was how beautiful the ray tracing looks, and the quick dang it
Resume.
the quick resume. Thank you.
Yeah,
And then with PlayStation 4, just the ridiculous read speeds of the SSD and the sound.
PS5.
Oh, are we gonna talk about the sound now?
Okay, so we're going to talk about
We
sound.
Let's
So
talk about the sound.
early on, when they announced the PS5, they said it's going to support a technology called 3D audio, and that it's hardware based. It's not software based. So how it works is they developed something called the Tempest engine, which is an audio engine that will be able to offer you. They used a really nice term for it.
Hang on, let me see if I
They
can.
they were like they had like this really nice term. I'm like, oh, that really sounds nice and fancy.
What, the
Um,
gold standard?
no, no, no. It was well, you look it up. So basically, is that they tested it with different configurations. So they tested it with headphones, they tested it with home entertainment systems, and with sound bars and all the sorts. And what they're aiming for is kind of like they really literally said the Matrix feeling, in which you actually think that the sound that's coming out of the game is actually happening in the real world instead of happening in the game world. So for example, if it's rain in the game, it's raining in the game. they want to create this the sense or the idea that the rain is actually coming from your living room instead of coming from the game. And to be able to do this, they have um, they've scanned people's ears basically and their hearing patterns because the shape
Oh,
of
you
the
mean the head related transfer function?
no, no, I'll look it up, the term. But
Yeah.
so what they did is they your because the shape of your ears, sound bounces off in all sorts of ways. So what they've done is they've kind of made profiles of people's ears. So they tested it among a group, and they've scanned people's ears, and they kind of developed a profile, a sound profile, to put it that way, that can kind of like
Yeah,
create
that's
this
yeah,
effect.
yeah, sorry, that's the thing that's called head related transfer function or HRTF.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
with HDRTF, you can basically choose these different profiles, and you can switch between, for example, the PS4 mode and the PS5 mode, and you'll be able to hear the difference, of course. And Sony's also hinted around like we might, because it's kind of like a research also that's going on, that they might
Mhm.
like either want a picture of your ears so that they can develop a profile or a video, or that a game has that. And so based on your hearing, they can tailor make it and customize it based on your ears. um,
Yeah.
because there are some people that simply do not hear the difference or cannot hear the difference. Sony said that at launch they will support 5 profiles, but more can be added in the future.
I think the point was that they would be adding more in the future
Yeah,
to just get a better range of support for people.
yeah.
And the thing that I love the most is that it's a 3D audio thing. Um, you can't have that on everything. Like for example, if you have 5.1 or 7.1 headsets, that's fine. Probably work on those things. If you have a full surround sound system, you'll probably be supported easily by that. But if you just have a TV,
Hmm.
you can't have that. So what they're also working on, and they have working to a limited capacity, is virtual surround sound stereo,
Yep.
so that it really feels like the, because it really feels like something that is coming from behind you from the left
Hmm.
really sounds like it's coming from you behind you in the left, even when you're using just the speakers on your TV. And oh my god, that is so amazing. Sorry, to me, it's stuff like technical stuff like that, that kind of wizardry stuff
Yeah,
is what I live for, and
yeah,
that is awesome.
yeah. Because it's funny that they actually mentioned that they opted for this instead of something like Dolby Atmos, because they took a custom approach to this. It's according to Sony, it's better than Dolby Atmos because it offers more sound sources. It offers more channels, higher quality, and also because it's hardware based, it's basically better. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know
and
if
if they pull off the virtual surround sound, it also means you don't need a proprietary hardware to experience it.
yeah. It's also cool that the part around audio that they mentioned is that the reason that they're also focusing on audio is that they can offer a bigger library of audio sources, which will only improve the sound quality and all audio related in the game. Because they kind of mentioned like, okay, a lot of gaming related innovations in the past few years have been around graphics, and they're trying to move away because yes, graphics matter, but we've gone to the point that we don't have we haven't gotten a lot of innovations in the last few years around other things, and that's why Sony's kind of aiming for that. So like, okay, we want innovations in other areas so people can actually truly feel that this is like a next generation instead of a prettier box with prettier graphics.
And that's the part that makes me happy. That's the part that kind of makes me more interested in the PlayStation 5 over the Series X, because I mean I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The thing that I like about having multiple consoles is the differences between them.
Mhm.
7th and 8th gen has honestly been the best and the worst generation, because it has been the most stale, the most stale of generations that we've had so far. and the only real things that were really innovative was an underpowered hybrid console and the fact that we had mid-generation refreshes. Like that, those two things are the only two real interesting things that happened just this generation. Let's be honest,
Yeah. Well, I think like
because
well,
developers hit a bottleneck pretty early on, which is why we got the mid-gen refreshes.
yeah, but
And
I
if Nintendo didn't flub the Wii U, we would probably still be dual screen playing on our TVs. But instead, they moved on to something that is way more flexible and interesting and appeals way more to people's way of life now than just sitting behind your console or PC and having high fidelity. So that's why the 3D audio to me is a very interesting proposition from Sony, because the way they're tackling it and the way I don't because Microsoft has said they're also doing 3D audio, but they didn't go in depth as Sony did as to what they're doing with their audio stuff. And my goodness, I hope that Microsoft is doing at least half of what Sony is doing with audio, because otherwise, this one is a really easy choice for me, to be honest.
I think that, and when I look at it, what this generation has done is it has created more, um, how to put it, like in the last gen, there were only a handful of games that I really thought like were okay. These are really really nice games, and I think what this gen has really done well is that it has opened up for more either memorable experiences in the form of games or experimental things. Um, I've seen a lot of indie games get nominated for Game of the Year awards or categories than prior generation. So we've kind of also got to the point that indie development has really matured. Um,
Oh yeah,
I'm not really an indie developer of indie game player, to put it that way. Of course, there are a few games once in a while that catch my attention, such as Astroneer, which I think is an amazing game. Um, but that's something I really like. And this generation kind of did give us games like God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. This gen was really the gen around open worlds, and that's something which really nice. And I'm curious to see what next gen will bring us. 'Cause I'm not looking for prettier graphics because I can get that on a PC. I'm really interested to see like, okay, well, what are games going to do besides that? So indeed, the audio part could be really really cool. I
yeah.
remember when I got a tech demo around. Um, I don't know what it's called. It was at the first time GDC was held in Europe, but the first time Gamescom was held, and I was invited
Mm.
to Dolby for
Oh my god, that was
for
like more than 10 years ago,
yeah,
dude.
it was in 2008, something like that.
2009.
2009, and
Yeah.
I got this demo at Dolby, and it was something where, for example, around I think it was like a precursor to Dolby Atmos, and then they gave us this demo with helicopters, and it actually felt that the helicopters were flying over us, and all these cool immersive audio thingies. And at that time, I was like, "Wow, this is really cool!" And if I can get that in my living room, for example, from an audio point of view, I'll be amazed. I mean, this generation tried to incorporate my smartphone into a game, which they luckily quickly shut off because nobody's waiting for that, or at least there's not like a really compelling experience to say like, okay, I really want
No,
this.
that I think the reason why that happened was because they saw that the DS was doing really good and the 3DS was had a less successful start, but it ramped up after the first year or so and after the discount. But I think that was part of the reason why we're seeing
I don't know.
nonsense like that.
But at least it
Oh my
didn't work
goodness.
for me. I mean, like it sounded really, really promising. I mean, with the division, they said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna give you this app, and then you can control a drone while playing with other players." They eventually killed that. They didn't even bring out the app. For Battlefield, they said, "Oh, we have the commander mode, so you can command the battlefield from your tablet." It came out, but I didn't hear a lot of good about it. So, like, I'm happy that we killed that. I think we should stick to.
At least they tried
They
something.
tried. I think we should stick to keeping it simple because there's a reason I sit behind my TV to play the games, and after that, I kind of want to leave it at there. I don't want to take my games with me or constantly be involved with the game because I kind of do need some downtime. Um, Otherwise, yeah, I'll just get like game fatigue and eventually say like, oh man, this game is taking up so much time. If I'm not behind the console playing it, I'm on my phone playing it, and that we need some breaks with that.
True, true.
Yeah. No
Yeah.
pricing was announced. And then the holiday, they still said
No,
it's
but they
coming
also
this year.
said it was just gonna be tech stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I do think because they're coming in at this lower power of performance tier compared to an Xbox Series X, that it might actually kind of confirm that it's not going to be 599. It's I don't even think it's going to be 499. I think it's going to be
Mm,
449, maybe 399, but I think 449, but it's definitely not going to be 599.
so here's why I think it's gonna be at the very least 499. At least when it comes to PlayStation 4. 5. Damn it.
Is all the custom
A
stuff.
lot of yeah, exactly. Custom stuff is not cheap to produce.
I know.
Like it's not cheap to research, it's not cheap to execute, and you have to set up the pipelines for it.
Yeah.
That stuff does not come cheap. I think at the very least both consoles will start at 499.
Do you think Microsoft
At,
will put their box in the stores for 499?
I think they have to.
Oh, definitely. But I think they'll if they do it, they'll take like a huge
Like
loss on it.
they have to.
Yeah.
I mean, Sony has committed that they're not going to do that. So I'm honestly thinking that part of the reason why the messaging on PlayStation 5 has been as sloppy as it has been is because they've probably been working so hard on these custom parts to make sure that despite the fact that most of the stuff that they're using is custom built is bringing the cost down enough, but at the same time delivering what they want in terms of fidelity, graphics, sound, all that mumbo jumbo.
Mhm.
Um, and I think at the very least, it's gonna be 499 for Sony. Microsoft, that's gonna be their starting point. Um,
Oh my god.
I think with the Series X, if the idea is to have a cheaper console, the I can see the Series X being 549 ish.
Oh, I don't hope so.
I don't hope so either, but I don't know. It
You know
just
what I think is going to happen? It's going to be the same as the E3 that we got to know the prices for the current gen. Microsoft
yeah.
has confirmed that they're doing something. Sony says we're not doing anything. I
Well,
think
they said that they weren't going to E3. They didn't say they weren't doing anything.
basically if they're not going to go to E3, then I think Microsoft's going to announce their pricing first and also their release date, and then Sony's going to come out of the blue and just to be like that extra bit, they're going to try to undercut them.
I don't know. Considering that it takes forever to set these things up, even if you're doing it digitally. Actually, especially if you're doing it digitally, because you can't last minute shift digital stuff. You just can't. Like you can last minute shift stuff if you're doing it on a stage performance because you're basically rehearsing that stuff up until the point you're actually going to do the presentation. But if you're going to do something that's digital, you have to have the script ready. You have to have every segment ready and shot. That stuff is not gonna change overnight. So whatever they're gonna do, it's gonna be set up weeks in advance.
Who
It's
knows?
gonna be prepped weeks in advance.
Let me put it this way: if Microsoft's gonna do 499 and Sony initially is also thinking 499, they will do something to undercut them.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see. I say we'll see. I don't think that they will, but then again, crazier things have happened. We live in weird times.
Yeah.
In general, we live in weird times. I mean, 2020 has not been very kind to us, but you know what? Screw it. Miracles happen.
Yeah. I
So
just hope that they can ramp up production in time to get ample supply out there because that's my main concern. They're
I think that's everyone's concern.
Yeah, because they're either going to have to postpone it or do like a phased launch in which they say we'll do America and Japan in this year and we'll do Europe next year. Well, if that happens, we're screwed because I do want my new PlayStation this year, and I'm not gonna get it from the States or whatever.
If they do that, they are gonna have a lot of angry people because this is not freaking 1995
Nope,
anymore.
no. And if they do go for their launch this year, because of the situation that we're in right now, and within China as well, because everything's done in China, I
Mhm.
think that we're gonna get like really limited supplies.
Unless they are able to strike a deal with suppliers outside of China and do it that way.
Yeah, but I don't. I think they can do that, such as India and Taiwan and stuff like that. But I don't think they can get the prices so low as they could in China
Mm, yeah,
because
that's kind of the main problem, ain't it?
that's why they always use for China because they can get cheap labor and get cheap prices. Because I think Foxconn is is the manufacturer or the assembler for the PS4 right now,
Yeah,
so they'll probably
Foxconn is the assembler for a lot of stuff.
yeah, so they'll probably go with those guys again. But yeah, they're based out of China primarily. They do have some factories outside of China, but they're primarily based out of China.
Mm. Well, I guess time will tell. Um, is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I think, oh,
I
I
do
almost
actually.
forgot. I almost forgot. Backwards compatibility.
Oh yeah.
So remember when I was saying stuff like, well, you could suspend an original Xbox or an Xbox 360 or Xbox One or Series X game? Yeah, that's because it has backwards compatibility for all those systems. To what extent, we don't know yet exactly. I'm assuming that they're just supplanting the backwards compatibility list from the Xbox One over to the Series X and basically broadening it from that point on. Maybe, possibly. Um, but that if that's true, then one, that's a lot of games. It's a lot of compatibility out there, and Sony ain't doing that.
But they kind of did give an explanation to that because
Well, they gave a reasonable explanation to do that, but point is they ain't doing that.
yeah, but I wouldn't take like that because from the start they said it will be backwards compatible with PS4. And I think like that's clear message. The only thing they've said now is that because that SSD is so custom and it brings so much it sounds like a super strange issue to have, but because it offers so much performance gain or it's kind of overkill in what you get back for it. So that certain games are not equipped to it sounds really stupid when we say it, but literally some games cannot handle the power or the performance that comes with it. And because of that, it might actually break the game. And that's why Sony has said, okay, they'll bring out a list of currently the top 100
100.
played games will probably be backwards compatible at launch. And it's actually up to the developers to kind of make sure that their games are backwards compatible. Of course, I would want it to be, you know, everything is playable from day one. But I actually do wonder if you just put all your games on that hard drive and you just plug in that hard drive to your PlayStation, like an external hard drive, that's not going to make it work because that's
No,
basically not going to get
I don't.
fast.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's gonna work for the simple fact that if they're going because essentially what they're doing now is they're gonna optimize a bunch of games so that it works on the PlayStation 5.
Mhm.
They're not saying like just put a disc in or whatever and get it done. Um, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that they have a CPU that isn't locked because Microsoft's is, and their compatibility is way higher. At least from what the way they've presented it, the compatibility is way higher. I
Mhm.
can't vouch for like how many games that's gonna be. If it's basically everything that's available for people that have an Xbox One right now, then I have to wonder how they're doing that.
Yeah, because the same issue that Sony has, Microsoft would kind of have it as well because they
Exactly.
also have like this massive amount of performance.
Maybe it throttles the performance per game instance
But
or per
that's the
game
same thing what the
instance type.
PlayStation is going to do. So like
Yeah,
basically,
but no,
you're
yeah,
going
but
to
the
have
thing is,
huge
it's
speeds at what it runs.
but it's not. What it's going to do is it's going to in their aim at at least from what I could tell is their aim with the backwards compatibility with PlayStation 4 is to enhance the experience, which Microsoft is doing as well, but they're not. But the thing is, what they said is that developers for the Series X don't have to lift a finger for backwards compatibility. They don't have to do squat. It's all done on the hardware side.
Okay.
So whatever enhancements that the Series X is doing for those older games is done from the hardware, but it's not something that requires them to update assets or have them be HD or whatever. It's just being upresed in a way that is clean and precise.
Yeah.
So whatever Sony is doing is really, really freaking weird. Don't get it. Don't get me wrong. They're going for optimization, and that's cool. But that also means that their backwards compatibility is going to grow slowly
We don't know yet because for Microsoft hasn't really.
because Microsoft's also grew slowly until like 2 years ago when it suddenly ramped up, and then they stopped doing original Xbox games. And I think they also are recently. I think they're still doing Xbox 360 games, but it's been really slow.
I don't know.
So
Yeah.
I
What
don't
I
know.
took away from it is that the PS5 is just going to run at different clock speeds to adjust to the platform. So if you have a PS4 Pro game, it's going to rev it down to runs at that speed, and it's also going to rev it down even lower to a PS4.
Which is also why you're not seeing PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, or PlayStation 1 support.
Yeah, but that's I think also because like it's built on a completely different architecture, and
For
they
one.
haven't invested in that the way Microsoft has invested in it in all those years because Microsoft started doing this on the Xbox 360. Whereas Sony has just some games that you can download from the PlayStation Store that run off of a PS4.
Which begs the question because Microsoft is clearly hardware and software based backwards compatibility because they're they're literally emulating the Xbox 360 and the original Xbox on the Xbox One. Whereas I don't think Sony is doing that at all, which means that we might not even see software emulation on the PlayStation 5 ever.
Yeah,
Unless they choose to do that. I mean, I don't know if if the PlayStation 5 has the overhead capacity to emulate other PlayStations. Like the PlayStation 3 would be like a complete nightmare to emulate because of the cell processor and how that works.
PS3.
But I can see at the very least PlayStation 1 software emulation being done because that's how
That's
the
already
PlayStation
being done.
3 did it.
Yeah,
PlayStation 3 did software emulation on PlayStation 1 games.
yeah. By the way, I see something that hasn't really gotten a lot of attention, but it's actually really nice. Is
Mhm.
PlayStation 5 will allow you to choose which part of a game you download first. We have that right now. And will also let you delete part of a game's save data. Rather than deleting
Where
the whole game, you can remove the multiplayer or campaign if you're finished with it.
wait, where are we
If you
reading
scroll all
this?
the way down.
And on IGN?
Yeah.
Let me see. Uh, wait, which article is
Additional
it?
details.
Oh, wait, it's the same
Yeah. It's in the spec sheet.
in the comparison list. Yeah, hang on, let me see.
But that's actually a pretty cool feature, and nobody's mentioned that because,
Oh,
for example, now with Call of Duty,
did he mention that during the whole
no,
thing?
I don't know where this came from, but the funny thing is that uh, it is coming from this. And it's from
Let me see. They have a thingy here.
yeah, but it's like an
Uh,
article that's ongoing and constantly being changed. But anyways,
yeah.
that's like a really nice feature because, for example, now with Modern Warfare, I finished the single player. I'm not touching it. Might as well just delete it, save some space on my hard drive or on my
Yeah,
SSD. So that's like really, really nice.
that is crazy.
Yeah, it sounds so simple of a feature, but it's actually a really nice feature especially for people like you whose hard drives are constantly full. Yeah,
But here's the thing, though, because I said because I and a lot of people have said before that if you put in like a small hard drive, then just throw in the towel. You're being an idiot. And considering that their proprietary SSD has this weird size, it would be indeed really handy if you only chose a specific part of a game to download and have that. Which is weird because I think there was a rumor floating around that 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 kind of functionality was also coming to the next generation Xbox, but I haven't seen anything about it or about the Series X. So,
there's one last thing I want to touch upon, and it's more a rumor that I sent you. That
mhm.
if it turns out to be correct, that would be like super amazing. But I don't know how plausible it sounds. Um, there's a rumor floating around that Sony is going to buy the rights and already has games in development linked to these rights in from Konami.
Mhm.
Specifically, they are going to buy the rights to Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, and Castlevania.
Yeah.
Apparently, according to this rumor, there are already games in development at Sony Japan, for example, in the Silent Hill franchise, which is going to be like a reboot. Um, I don't know how plausible it is. It almost sounds too good to be true because if they buy those rights, then Konami literally has almost nothing. But at the same time, in the article, it is said that the reason they can do this is because Sony has such an amazing and a great relationship with Konami that that's the one of the reasons that they're willing to do it because they've been like these partners from day one. Maybe that Konami gets royalties or something for the every game that is sold or something like that. But
Well, they're using their IPs to make pachinko machines, so it's not like they can sell all versions of the IP. So I'm assuming that they're keeping the arcade rights.
yeah, which it probably brings in a lot of money for them.
Oh,
But
it brings them a lot of money.
if this pans out to be true, then I can bet you that the next game Kojima Productions is gonna work on is either Silent Hill or Metal Gear.
Okay, I don't think that he's ever gonna touch Metal Gear ever again. Um,
I don't know.
but Silent Hills, that because that's what the rumor is saying that Kojima Productions is in the early stages of working on Silent Hills once again.
Yep.
Um, who knows? I mean, at this point, anything is possible. And considering that outside of the technical stuff that we've heard this week, there isn't a lot of thing coming from the Sony camp.
But
And
they specifically said that there will be plenty of opportunities during the year to talk about the games and show the games. And
true,
I think we
but
kind of needed.
but let's be honest, opportunities are kind of shrinking.
That's why everybody's going. This will be the year of the online event because,
mm,
like, E3 got canceled, Gamescom is going to get canceled. Everything will be in a direct kind of style or setting. This will be
yeah.
the year that the crowd did not get to attend an event and just got to watch things.
Hmm.
Um, and I think Sony needed this because now we get all the technical mumbo jumbo out of the way. So now
Yeah.
we can focus on what matters the most, and that's games, games, and even more games.
Hmm.
There's just a few lingering things like what's it gonna look like, what's the pricing gonna be, when it's gonna come out, what's the controller gonna be like. Um,
Speaking of what it's gonna look like, the internals of we didn't even touch on that, did we? The internals of the Series X.
yeah,
That thing is packed.
yeah.
It's like a dang Tetris box.
They really engineered it in a smart way.
They really engineered it in a ridiculously smart way.
Yeah, and it's cool that they kind of drifted away from basic.
Did you hear the comparison that Digital Foundry did though
No,
about the form factor?
no.
I really freaking hate this one. They said the form factor looked like two GameCubes stacked up together.
Now that you mention it,
Yeah, but without the duct tape. Ha 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 ha.
I mean, I'm curious to see what Sony's gonna do, but
We jokes in 2020, man. Come on, man, people. give it up. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how PlayStation 5 is eventually gonna look like. I really hope it does not look like the Deaf unit because uh, no,
Well, it could
just
be because they talked about a cooling solution that is fitting. Microsoft is using a vapor chamber. I mean, come on, somebody has to step in and say we're gonna go look at cooling, man. They have to do like the
yeah.
all-in-one liquid cooling solution. It's not that expensive these days to make it, and I think that
Yeah, but I think the thing with liquid cooling is people have this image of what if it falls and it starts leaking all over the place.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't even have to drop it to have it because my initial liquid cooler had that problem. My PC.
You have you have experience with this stuff. Why are you saying they should look into liquid cooling?
Okay, let me put it this
Dang
way.
it! It's supposed to be a consumer level product, man.
Okay, let me put
Dang.
it this way. They cannot. They can't do like fan cooling, which because Microsoft
Oh
even
no, it's not a fan. It's not. I don't think. I think the reason why the dev unit looks like that is so that they can use additional cooling on the units so that the dev units don't overheat. But I think the consumer units might use something like a vapor chamber.
I hope so.
Well, they have to. They can't use fans because they said. I mean, I'm sure that there are fans in there, but they'll use additional cooling systems to make the ambient so that it doesn't sound like a jet engine, like the PlayStation 4 does. Right?
Oh my god,
Jet engine.
it really.
Although to be fair, my PlayStation 4 also tends to sound like a jet engine if I'm playing a surprisingly um, graphics intensive game. So, and
Wow.
I'm using a regular PlayStation 4,
An OG PS4, like
an
a
OG
first
PS4.
generation, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. A colleague of mine, he replaced the thermal paste on a PS4 Pro, and he says it's no longer a jet engine. So I was thinking
Wow,
about
that's
doing that.
that's a risky move.
Well, but I was thinking about doing it, but then I thought like, okay, but I'm at home for a couple of weeks, and if I break my PS4 right now, then I can't play.
You're not getting that thing back anytime soon. I'm gonna tell you that straight
Yeah,
up.
so that's why I'm just like waiting.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
All
basically
right.
it, right? I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, pretty much, and then some.
Yeah. Um, as always, you can reach out to us through a whole range of social media outlets. Um, you can reach out to us on Anchor or listen to us on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Overcast, Stitcher, Pocket Radio, or what? It was a new one.
Pocket. What was it called
There were
again?
some new listeners from Pocket something. Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts and other all the platforms. It makes us more visible. You can email to us, gamerivalsfeedback@gmail.com. You can leave a voice message. There's a link in the description. You don't have to make an Anchor account for that. You can tweet at us, game underscore rivals underscore. You can tweet at Maximilian at Maximilian.
You
Um,
can follow us on Instagram at @GameRivals.
Follow us on Instagram at Game Rivals. Follow.
I've been a bit more productive on that end.
He's been a bit more productive on that end. Uh, Game Rivals YouTube. We'll put a link in the description below. Send us a postal pigeon or smoke signs or maybe Morse code or just reach out to us in any way possible. Um, do you have any last words?
um, well, I got Animal Crossing early, and considering that we're forced to not go outside as often, um, yeah, this has been as of recording. I just finished day one. Tomorrow I'm getting my house, and I'm gonna expand my reach on the island. So,
You'll probably hear
fun
more
times.
about that in our regular episode.
I'm definitely gonna give my impressions on that when that rolls around. Yes,
Awesome sauce. Okay, cool. On that note, my name is Sean Templar. You are,
Maximilian X.
and we'll catch you on the next one.
Later.